Hey friends, Damian Mason coming at you to talk about groceries, your food bill, and what higher priced food means for all of us. Headline this week in the Wall Street Journal: grocery bills are rising rapidly even as viruses disruptions ease. Your food, the amount you pay for it, jumped by 5.8% just in the 13 weeks from March 1 until May 30th. And it looks like those price increases are here to stay. Why is that a big deal? Because first off, we haven't seen a price jump like that in our nation's food prices since 1974. I'll get to the historical issue here in a minute. But what you should know about groceries and spending is this. Okay, things went crazy for a while because we shut down the economy and you couldn't buy toilet paper and hand sanitizer was flying off the rack, right? We remember all that. But then we shut down meat processing plants because employees were contracting coronavirus and it seems like they were becoming little hotspots. The meat processing plants are mostly back online, but they're not at capacity, meaning they can't run as many pigs and chickens and beef animals through the facility as they once did because now of spacing and plexiglass and various other coronavirus mitigation issues. These price increases that you're seeing aren't just in meat, although they're led by meat, which is up over 15% in price in the last 3 months. All food items are more, and it's because of the same thing. The processor is not at capacity, is putting in safeguards, and is slowed down. So they are absorbing more cost, which means you're getting the price passed on to you. The farmer is not making any more money either, because there still is the same amount of food being produced on our nation's farms. So what's this all really mean? Well, in my book, Food Fear, I talk at great length about cheap food. You see, in the United States of America, we've always had cheap food. Lucky us. But when we see disruptions like this, usually consumers trade down. You'll go from a branded item to a generic item. Or when it comes to meat, you might switch from steak. Like, for instance, this package of T-bones, which I didn't buy at the grocery, I raised them. You might switch from steak to chicken, right? That's what normally happens. You trade down. Or you might even go from chicken down to hot dogs. That's a trade down. The last time we saw an issue with a recession, which we are now in, was in 2008, as you probably well remember. 2009 through 2014, we dropped about 20 pounds of meat consumption per American per year. We're back up to 220 pounds, or at least we were before this. So what probably is going to happen is that meat consumption will go down. Will it go down by 20 pounds per person? Perhaps. It took a couple of years for that to happen during our last recession. And will we trade down from steak to chicken? Probably. Or from chicken to hot dogs? Probably. So the issue is the poor people. Poor people are disproportionately harmed with higher food prices because they spend more of their income on food. This happens not just here in the U.S., but it happens throughout the world. And in fact, it's country to country. Here in the United States of America, we spend 6.4% of our gross income on food. In Nigeria, it's 56%. In Guatemala, it's 41%. So just think about that. So what do I see happening? I see that long-term, these price increases are probably here to stay. I don't think it's going to benefit the farmer or rancher. I don't think it's going to benefit the processor because they're absorbing more costs. It probably, though, on a bigger stance, is inflation positive. And what I mean by that is in 1974, we saw these food price increases. And you might remember, if you're old enough, the 1970s, we had a thing called stagflation. Stagnant economy, we were in constant recession, and inflation, which means your money was worth less. I have always said that agriculture in many ways is countercyclical, but it's also predictive. So what if we say, oh boy, we saw this in 1974, then what happened? Well, we saw gas price issues, we saw gas shortages, and we saw stagflation come into the common vernacular. So is this worrisome? A bit. We could be in for a big time of government debt, stagnant economy, and inflation, which we haven't seen for decades. We also should be very positive about one thing. The United States of America has had a policy of cheap and abundant food for the masses for 150 years. Since the incarnation of the United States Department of Agriculture, our mission in the business of agriculture has been to provide abundant, safe, plentiful food and great variety for the American populace. So while this could be bad and we could be heading into an inflation scenario and food is our leading indicator, you should also understand this, that you probably are okay on food and you're probably spending less than most anybody on earth right now, even with these price increases, because we might go from spending 6.4% of our gross income on groceries to maybe 7%. And that still puts us leaps and bounds ahead of people in third world countries who are food insecure and also paying so much of their meager income for their daily sustenance. I'm Damian Mason, educating you about the business of food and agriculture. Thanks for tuning in.